Job security is a myth. Don't fool yourself. All it takes is one conversation in a different room and you're out of work. The only real job security is 6+ months of savings, transferable skills, and a great network of people that can help you. And that was posted on Instagram by The Growing Investor. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Toy Talks podcast. There was almost not an episode, number one, because I'm just completely exhausted, if I'm honest. New motherhood, kicking my ass, exhaustion, I often forget to eat, yada yada yada. And then my laptop started playing up. I've decided to record downstairs because my beautiful girl is in our room and I just really didn't want to disturb her. I thought that would be unfair to try and record with her in the room trying to go to sleep, especially if the intention isn't for her to be in the room. So I moved. I figured that it would be better anyway, and the acoustics seem to be better downstairs. You already know what I think about job security. I think there's no such thing as job security in as much as you can't even trust the government to get things right. Where do I start? Okay, let's start with what I think affects all of us the most. So the Electoral Commission has basically gone on record and made an announcement and basically said that there's a high volume of personal information of people registered to vote in the UK between 2014 and 2022 whose home addresses and names have basically been accessed by unnamed hackers. There's a cyber attack that's basically happened. So all those people that were registered on the electoral roll, on the open electoral roll, your details have been compromised by hackers, and they've only just announced it now. And I just think, how has this happened, and why are we only finding out about it now? Does it coincide with the fact that the Tories have already started their campaign for re-election? Is it because it's so huge and massive that they've had no choice but to say anything? But they didn't find out yesterday about the hackers. They've known about it for a while. So what I am going to encourage everybody to do is to make sure that you keep abreast of, your Experian, your Equifax. I don't know if anyone who listens to the podcast has ever worked for Capita. I got a letter from Capita. I used to work for them several years ago. I had a pension with them actually, and it's still there. And they wrote to me and basically offered me a year's access free of charge to Experian because my data had been compromised and basically sold on the dark web. And then I get a notification today basically saying to me that my email address has been found on fraudulent trading sites. So basically someone has my details. And I'm exhausted, to say the least. But, I mean, the way I look at it is, it's going to be a bloody pain. And it's going to F up my credit. But I know it's not me. So all I need to do is basically show the letter that I got from Capita, the notification I got today, and just basically write to all these people if anything does happen. But also once a month bi-weekly, I will be checking out my credit report and everything, make sure no one's opening credit cards or trying to take out loans or mortgages in my name. But we're living in an era where personal data is really high currency. It's high currency, especially for people who are fraudulently trying to defraud systems and institutions. And when we talk about financial literacy and things like that, and all the things that we would have put in place to ensure that we have a better relationship with money, our credit is one of them, because we understand our credit gives us lines of credit, be it bank loans, mortgages and things like that. And when somebody plays with your personal details and it affects that, it literally can affect your whole life. It can affect your ability to get an overdraft, even if it's £100. It affects your ability to be able to do anything. You need good credit. Especially if you're not financially able to raise money like that. You're going to have to take loans and borrow and things like that. I mean, a mortgage is effectively a loan. So that's really pissed me off. And then I see this electoral roll and I think, well, I've only recently been on the closed register. So back in 2014, I was probably on an open register somewhere. So one thing about me is I'm always going to keep you abreast of what's going on, even if they choose to not shine a light on it. It should be all over the media. In fact, we should all be receiving letters like we all did during COVID and trying to take the vaccine. about this data breach that's happening with the Electoral Commission, because it affects everybody who's been basically registered to vote. It's ridiculous. Also, in pop culture news, Tory lanes. That whole case with Tory Lanez and Megan Thee Stallion will forever perplex me, because there is 4 versions of the truth. Tory Lanez, Kelsey, that's Megan's former friend, and Megan, and then the truth. And the only people that really know what happened are the people that were there that day. Apparently, they didn't find Tory Lanez's fingerprints on the gun, allegedly. But I think there's a lot at play here. I hear the whole Rock Nation thing. It's just something isn't right in this whole story. And I don't know what it is. Something doesn't sit right with me. In any case, Tory Lanez has been handed a sentence of 10 years for his part in the shooting of Megan Thee Stallion. And she was shot in the foot, in the leg, foot. And many people have said 10 years is a long time. Iggy Azalea wrote a letter to the judge in support of Tory Lanez. It's emerged that our good sister, Steph London, wrote a letter to the judge as well, as and amongst other people. And on social media, there was like uproar, more so for Steph London than Iggy Azalea, because I feel like Iggy Azalea is really, I personally find her quite strange. I don't understand like how she's, I don't know. I find her very strange. Like, you know, like there's some people who say, yeah, she's very pro-women and she's very like for, but I don't get that with her. I get very cold, I just get really mixed vibes with Iggy. I don't know. That's just how I feel. With Steph London, I think people are really harsh on her. But what would you expect? Like, for me personally, Steph London is not a girl's girl. She doesn't appear to me as a girl's girl. So her writing a letter in support of Tory Lanez wasn't necessarily against Megan Thee Stallion, but the action purports that it would be. So I completely get it, and I completely understand why people were like shocked. But the way she looked at it probably is she's writing a letter to the judge in defense of her friend. Apparently the guy that Megan Thee Stallion was with, they're no longer together. I think the Tory Lanez and Megan Thee Stallion story is a classic example of ego, and when ego takes over. Tory Lanez allowed this situation to get to where it is. So the 10 years are, as a result, a direct result of his egotistical behaviour, because there was a point where Megan was not going to do anything about this. And then there was a smear campaign led by Tory Lanez, allegedly. And Megan was like, no, you're taking a piss. It is also alleged that Megan Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez were in a relationship, and then it didn't work out, and then he did a thing with Kelsey, and Kelsey used to be Megan's friend and was her friend at the time. It's just a big mess. And if you heard Kelsey's account of what happened, 2 and 2 is equaling 6. Something's not right here. But Tory Lanez allowed this to get to where it is. The 10 years he's serving are 10 years of his ego, where he just didn't know where to just walk away and say nothing. And I think that there's a lot of that in the world of work, whereby there's a lot of ego, especially like hiring managers, HR, whereby ego takes over and then they're unable to draw it back again. I think we've all been in that situation before. I find when working in white dominated industries even more so, and I say this on Instagram, and I'll say it right here, like a lot of the issues I've had in work and being able to navigate has been with white men, then white women, and then I would say Asian women. And how black women are seen in the world of work has always been, and this is my opinion, I've always felt quite oppressed. I've always felt like I've had to work harder, do more, as all of us have probably felt this. But I've worked with some egotistical pricks, and it's almost like they can't be men in their house, so they have to come and beat their chest in the office, their chipolate chest, because it's not my fault that your wife doesn't recognise your position in your house. So then you come into the world of work and you're angry. and then you take it out on the black woman, or you take it out on who you feel like you can get away with it, then ego takes over. Especially, for example, there's an episode called Closet Racist. Do you remember when that guy just emailed one of my colleagues who was my junior, basically like disrespected me because he wasn't getting his way in a particular project? I can't remember what the issue was, but he wrote it down. And I can never, even now, for the life of me, understand why he wrote it down. Because if it was a verbal conversation, he said, she said, but he wrote an email. And then I ended up getting hold of that email, using it against him. And even in that, his ego didn't even allow him to take responsibility for what he did. He was then asked to do, racial awareness training and XYZ, and he left before he did that and even completed it. Because ego. He thinks he's better than me. He thinks he's, doing this race relations training is beneath him. And how many of us have worked with people whose egos come before them? And they say ego comes before a fall, and in Tory Lane's case, 100%. But even in the world of work, we see it all the time. So this episode is actually a dilemma episode, and this young lady has we speak, I'd say regularly on the DMs, and she's somebody who really embodies Toy Talks. She really does. You can tell when she communicates with me or asks me something that she really, number one, listens to the podcast, but number two, she really takes in the masterclasses. And I'm so proud of her, because she'd wanted to get into tech for so long and worked so damn hard, and she's in tech now. And she is, by the grace of God, flourishing. And she shared with me when she had her offer. And I was one of the first people she shared it with. And I felt so honoured. But she did the work. I just provided the tools. So she sent me a dilemma. And I asked her if I could read it out. She said yes. So here it is. So before this job, I had another job offer a few months ago. The recruiter, a black young lady, reached out to me about a job, told me all the info. Thought the salary could be better, but I needed the interview experience, and it was better than what I was on, where I was at the time. I went for the interview, 2 ladies, 1 white, 1 black, who were on the team. The white lady was more senior. I received a phone call from the white lady saying I passed, even though they didn't get back to me within the time frame that they had basically told her. She told me about the information, etc. So we got down to speaking about salary, etc. And then when she went on to tell me that the actual position I interviewed for was taken, and that this one just opened because I did well in the interview, she wanted to give me first choice on it. Thinking about it now, I think this was bullshit, and that the salary is reduced than what was offered to me initially before the interview. So effectively what she's saying is she had an interview for a role, and she knew the salary wasn't great, but she interviewed anyway because she wanted the interview experience. Again, this is somebody that you know listens to the podcast, because I say this all the time. Interview. That's the practice makes perfect, to really understand how to do interviews, especially if you've purchased the interview masterclass. So effectively, she had the interview, and then she was told the job that she actually applied for is no longer available. But because she's done so well at the interview, they're going to do another opening for another position, and they're offering it to her. So this is how organisations set you up, by making you think that, and maybe in some cases it happens, isn't it, when you create roles for somebody because you've interviewed someone who's amazing, yeah? But you know, because of discernment, you know. But in this case, it wasn't that. The job she'd interviewed for was no longer available. By the time they got back to her, it was outside the time frame that they told her that they would do. And then they said to her, right, we're going to create this role just for you, but the salary is even less than the role that she initially applied for. I didn't like the place where I was working at the time, and I desperately wanted to change. So I was like, okay, no problem. I'll give it a shot, because I was working on other things in the background. She told me to let her know in the next 24 hours if I wanted it before they put it up for advertising, etc. So I said yes. she told me she would get back to me with a date that I would start onboarding and doing reference checks, etc. A few weeks, maybe up to a month went by. I didn't hear back. So I emailed her. Then she told me that they had a lot of new people starting and that I will start all my onboarding stuff in like another month. No problem. The date she gave me came and went. Then the onboarding started. I was sent an offer letter, etc. And I went through it thoroughly, learning from you. I now saw that the salary was even further reduced. So this is a second reduction in salary. Then I was like, no, something doesn't make sense here. So I called the recruiter to clarify who is in-house and works in their office, and she was fuming. I could tell she was fuming. She couldn't keep it together, and she said that she wasn't kept up to date, etc. Cut a long story short, the first salary was reduced significantly, and now they're saying it's no longer one day in the office, it's every day in the office, after wasting about 2 months of my time. Should I take it up or leave it? The recruiter has told me the woman was lying. It was the same job all along. And then there was some other stuff, but I've always been really clear to everybody that, listen, if you're looking for the perfect organisation, it doesn't exist. In the same way, the perfect candidate doesn't exist. But there are some fundamental things that need to be present, and you need to understand the dynamics of an interview. It's important because it could be the difference between whether you accept a role or not. Now, the red flag for me with this particular role is when you tell me you're going to come back to me in a month and you don't come back to me in a month and I have to chase you twice. That's a red flag. It tells me that your HR is in a mess and you're not prioritising my role, and my role is actually not important to this department. Yeah? That's number one. Number two, this whole trying to feed one's ego by saying, so you don't tell the person at interview stage that the role doesn't exist. You tell them after they interview so that you can gas them into thinking that you have now created this special role for them. And then you further reduce the salary in the hope that you can strong arm them to accept the role. It's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful. And then to be told by the person who's an in-house HR that actually this person, the hiring manager's lying. It's actually the original role that you applied for. It hasn't gone to anyone else. And she's just slashed the salary. So what I'm hearing there is that they're outside of budget. So they want to get you on the cheap. Now, luckily for this queen, this woman of much intelligence, she already knows what it is. The role that she has now with a completely different company is the role that she was meant to have. But the reason why I wanted to come in here and share it with you all is this. We're living in a society whereby organisations have, and society as a whole, have forgotten all about COVID, all about the learning lessons, all about everything. This role that was offered to her on 1 day a week in the office is now full time. Organisations are forgetting how to motivate staff. They remember that they don't trust staff anymore, but during COVID, they had no choice but to trust their staff. They had no choice whatsoever. It was all working remotely. It was in lockdown. If you didn't trust your staff, well, that's your problem. And people are finding ways around mouse jigglers being controlled by an organisation. What you find is if people work from home, they're more productive. They work longer hours because they're at home, and your role then becomes a lot more delivery based, more outcome based, because you're not in the office. Being in the office, someone's suffering to be on the train, and knowing that an organisation wants you in the office Monday to Friday, but they're not subsidising your travel, they're not giving you a pay rise, they expect you to use that same salary on an ever-growing transport system. The cost of transport is unbelievable. Can you see how this woman that interviewed her ego got the best of her? And I tell you why. She didn't credit this queen with any intelligence or any type of understanding of how the world of work works. She expected this queen to just accept the role like that. That's what she expected. And then she kept moving the goalpost. And the thing is, when you keep moving the goalpost, you're hoping that the person whose goalpost you're moving is going to feel so desperate for a role that they'll just accept any trash you give them. And the worst part of it is, if the contract comes out, the contract will be even worse. If an organisation advertises a role, I'm just gonna say this to you now, and you get an interview, you need to print off the advert. You need to print off the advert. That's where we are now. That's where we are now. The advert, the job description, everything, you need to print it off. Because what happens is, when they offer the role, they remove it from these job boards, or they remove the advert, then you're having to remember, oh, I think it said no. Just take the advert. And it's not for you to go in an interview and say, well, the advert said this, this and that. No. You wait until offer stage and the contract comes. And when it doesn't align with what you're offered versus what was advertised, you get to then give them the advert and say, sorry, this is misrepresentation. This is not what I applied for. This is where we are now. I think hiring managers, HR, I think they've all lost it. They've actually all lost it. And I think because now it's an employer's market, employees are forgetting. We're forgetting our bargaining power. We're forgetting our source. We're forgetting that we're subject matter experts. And I get it. It's the pressure of where we are in society now with the cost of living crisis. Listen, I went to Sainsbury's today. My local shop, where I get my shopping is Sainsbury's, and I hardly bought anything, and my bill came to £40. I came home and I said to Kate, I was like, what is this? We have one child. She's 3 months old. 3 months. How is fabric conditioner almost £7, please? What's all this? That being said, basic things, water, petrol, they are at an elevated cost. So when you're applying for a role, you have the pressure of wanting a role and wanting to get paid because of cost of living, making sure you get the maximum amount of money, and also needing to be employed. I understand that. Organisations, the way they look at it is, listen, we're going to drive down the cost of this person. Yeah, that's their attitude. You've got to remember, at offer stage, at contract stage, that's what they're thinking. Because if the cheaper they can get you, the less money they take out of their budget. We're at this point in life, I think we're in the 4th quarter of the year now, aren't we? People are running out of budget. New budget was released in April. They're running out. So they're having to cut costs where they can. And there are people out there that will ignore the red flags and are just so grateful to have a job. So they will take terms that they would have never applied for had it been made obvious to them at the point of application. Let's be really, 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 really clear. An organisation that moves the goalpost is a red flag. When you go there and you are told you're going to get they're going to train you, you're going to go on courses, you're going to get a discretionary bonus, you won't get any of those things. Because if they move the goalpost before you get in there, can you imagine what they're going to do when you get into the actual role? They'll move the goalpost, they'll frustrate you, and you'll just have to, you'll be so paralysed with shock. Before you know it, you've been there 3 years and nothing to show for it other than length of time. I've looked on the commercial market at the moment, I've looked at the job market, and what I am going to say is during the summer holidays, it's quite quiet anyway, because most people are on holiday, people are not really recruiting, it's few and far between. But I will also say, and caveat that and also say, is from September onwards, the market will pick up a bit more in terms of jobs, depending on obviously your industry, but generally it will pick up. But what I have noticed is the salaries are quite low. I couldn't believe I saw procurement director role, 60,000 a year. I know procurement director on over 100k. How is 60,000? I don't understand. Senior project lead, yeah? And I've seen the job description. That job should be paying 90k, that job is paying 50k. Which tells me that the market is really bad. And this is why I say to you always, you need to negotiate. Where there is a cost code, there is a budget. We've got a podcast episode called that as well. But I'm also going to go one step further. Where you are a subject matter expert that can add value, there is a budget. Now, for me who's on maternity leave, you can imagine me looking on the market thinking, what the hell is this? It's a joke. It's a joke. And I got an email from someone that said, Toya, I've got a role with a fantastic company. I'd love to speak to you. Your CV's amazing. All of this is bullshit. It's lighting fire up my ass. Come on. The fact that you can't send me the JD as part of your introduction email and tell me what how much they're paying tells me already that they can't pay me what I'm worth. So I'm already not interested. I'll have the conversation because I want to hear what you're going to say. I want to see how you're going to market this to me. But the reality is I know my worth. It's really, 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 really concerning when an organisation, such as this one in the dilemma, goes outside HR. That's scary. Because in-house HR didn't know that this was going on, didn't know that she'd slashed the salary, didn't know that she basically lied to the candidate and said, oh, well, the role that we were going to offer you has been given to someone else. That whole thing was a lie. Is that someone you want to work for? And God is so kind. This queen secured a job already. Her question to me is, Toya, shall I take them on now and make a formal complaint because they did waste 2 months of my time? And I said to her, darling, focus on your focus. Focus on your focus. Don't get distracted by these people. You're not working for them anyway. Yes, it's an unfortunate situation. And what I will say is, if this was a role that you were waiting for and it caused you to decline other roles, then fair enough. But that would never be the situation you're in because you've got Toya Talks. And I would always tell you that you cannot put all your eggs in one basket. Even when I've got a job offer, I'm still interviewing. 110%. Some of you, and I got a dilemma a few months ago actually. And this young lady, I need to find it. Because I don't even think I read it out. I think there was a lot going on. And she basically said that she was offered a job and she had an interview for another job, and then she told them that she already had another job offer. Why are you doing that? And she couldn't explain it to me. But I think it was her ego. I think that she wanted them to know that she was in demand. But don't you see that if you have your credentials, your CV is dope, you're a subject matter expert, it goes without saying that the default is that you are in demand. Do you understand? Some things need not be said. But I feel like ego comes before you actually thinking things through. And you're telling them, yeah, I've got 2 job offers. Why would you do that? Why? Now, the one that I do agree with is when you're speaking to an agency, because I speak to an agency and they say, have you got any interviews lined up? And I say to them, I was actually offered a role with XYZ and I had to decline because the contract was really bad and it was inflexible. They look shocked. But I say it just to let them know that I can decline a job. And it's almost like agencies then see me as a challenge, like, we're going to have to get her a job. We're going to get her a role. We're going to get her a job. Oh, yeah. I want to be the one to get the commission on this one. Yeah. I tell them about the ones I declined. It depends who it is, not all the time, but sometimes. Just so they can know that I know my value. Yeah? You can't tell me it's once a month in the office and then suddenly I get a contract and you're telling me, you don't address remote working or any hybrid working. You just agree with the manager. That's so much bullshit. It stinks. Even the dustmen men, they're not collecting this week because it's stinking. What kind of rubbish is that? But again, I feel like hiring managers, organisations are forgetting that it may be an employer's market, but employees have wisened up. Some of you have really dumped all the learning lessons from COVID and operate in RAS and then come into me to come and tell me the issue for me to... I can't save you. You've chosen not to save yourself. You see this dilemma I've just read? This queen was so smart that she already knew what it was. She already secured a job. She already did. But I think for her it was the shock that maybe a younger her or a more naive her could have been the person that was waiting on this job, only for them to do all of this. And the thing is, if you are the type of person that's waiting on this one job for them to onboard you, they move the goalposts, slash the salary, slash the contract terms. It's not 1 day a week in the office anymore, it's full time in the office, and you're rejecting other jobs. You're going to have no choice but to take that job because you would have rejected all other jobs. And this is the reason why you have to keep your options open when it comes to roles, even during your probation period. Because an organisation can give you the best version of them, and you get into the organisation and the job that you have applied for and been onboarded for and the job in front of you in day one is completely different. Now, if your probation period is between 3 to 6 months, that's an opportunity for you to know, number one, can I stay here? Is this a job for me? Does this organisation say they're going to do what they want to do? Is this organisation doing what they say they're going to do? My line manager at interview was amazing. Now she doesn't even acknowledge me. Is this somebody I can continue working with? They said it's a collaborative team. This team don't even talk to each other. There's infighting. Can my spirit live in this job for a month? Can my spirit live in this job for a year? Probation periods are mutual. Stop allowing these organisations to hoodwink you into thinking that you're not worthy enough, to make you think that the market is so bad that no one's going to want you. Where there is a cost code, there is a budget. And I'm telling you that a lot of these organisations, hiring managers, they suffer from inflated egos. They've all got this Tory Lane effect, Tory Lane ego, moving mad like a bull in a china shop. And when you see them acting this way, it's like the ancestors warning you, this is what's awaiting you. I'm not the one you could do that to. The minute you tell me you're going to onboard me in a month and you don't onboard me in a month, I'm not chasing you. Me. It's a lie. You will even come to me and ask me why I'm not chasing you. I'm not chasing you. Because the way I look at it is, if I was offered a job somewhere, if I got offered a job, right, and you're onboarding, you're about to onboard me, then I got offered a job somewhere else. You would expect me to tell you that I've got offered a job somewhere else and I've accepted it. So why does this organisation think that they don't have to update somebody if they're breaching their own timescales? Lack of organisation is not an organisation I want to work for. Start raising the bar of expectation for these organisations. Some of you, look, your bar's too low. Your bar's too low. And that's the reason why crap roles and crap situations when it comes to offers keep coming your way, because your bar is low. Some of you are too afraid to set any type of bar because you think it's going to count you out in being considered, being invited for interview, or even getting a job offer. I remember, I think it was last year now. God, the years are all blurring into one. But it was last year and I interviewed for a role working for a particular organisation. It was for an agency. So I've never met this woman before, as is most of the situations that we're in, isn't it? Where we never meet these agents. Only the weird ones who want to do a video call so they can typecast you, but okay. But this one, the communication was by phone and via email. And she basically asked me my criteria for a role holder, and she goes, yep, this organisation ticks everything to her, I want to put you forward. She put me forward for interview, they invited me for an interview, and I was interviewed by the hiring manager and a contractor who was currently doing the role. And the interview went, I'd say relatively well. I wouldn't say it was one of my best interviews, but I would say that I had done enough, I thought, to leave an impression. And that's always my aim, like, have I done enough to leave a positive impression? And I had done, because within 48 hours, the agency was just ringing my phone down. And I think I had another contract at the time, so I was working remotely, I was quite busy. So I ended up calling the agency. They're like, oh my God, they loved you so much, they thought you were amazing, And some of you get lost in that feedback source. Not me. Because you tell me I'm amazing, I'm this. Okay, fine. What's next? Because we all know that organisations are not perfect. So when they're telling me I'm amazing, you're not remembering I'm amazing. When, for example, I make a mistake at work, you're not going to remember that my interview was amazing. You're not going to remember that I was amazing if I don't agree with you. Maybe there's a meeting and there's a decision to be made and I don't agree with you. You're not going to remember that my interview was really amazing. So I feel like for me, I put everything in perspective. Yeah? And maybe I'm slightly cynical, but I've been through a lot and seen a lot in the world of work. So nothing really phases me. You understand? I'm not easily pleased. You can't throw these words. The people that have sweet mouths are Nigerians. So I've heard every sweet one thing before. Okay. So one of the questions I had asked at interview is, why is the contractor not taking the role perm? And I asked her this question in the interview. And she said to me, because she is a career contractor, that for her, she just wants a contract, she's not interested in perm. And I said, but what they're offering is really, really good for a perm. If you consider, across the board of what one would get as a perm from contracting. She said, yes. I said, what is it in this role that they could do to make you go perm? I said it in the interview when they asked me if I've got any questions. I'm really direct in the interview. And she said, well, there's nothing that they could offer me to make me stay. I think I've made the decision. I'm a career contractor, so the understanding is I was always going to leave. That is the politician answer. That's an answer I would give. So, do I believe her? No. If she had just been, maybe that's her honest, right? But something didn't smell right. In fact, even me asking her, she looked uncomfortable. But isn't that an obvious answer? The question to ask somebody. Anyway, so I was invited to a second interview, and apparently the contractor really liked me, the hiring manager, everybody. So I went back to the agency and I said, I'm not interested in second interview. She said, sorry Toy, did you say you're not interested in second interview? I said, no. She said, why? I said, because number one, they have no processes in place. They've admitted that to me. So I'm wondering what the contractor's been doing for the last 9 months. If the role has now gone perm, I would have expected as a contractor they would have set up the infrastructure for a perm then to come in and do what they need to do. But they don't even have the basic processes. So either that contractor has been fighting fires, or this organisation is process resistant. And I'm not going anywhere to fight with anybody. She went quiet. She said, can I get the hiring manager to call you? I said, yeah, why not? Within a few hours, he called me. He said, oh, Toya, I was told that you're not considering having a second interview. Can I ask you why? I said, yeah. I said, you've got a whole contractor that you've had for 9 months. And this role has now gone perm. So it tells me that you've run out of budget. That's why you can't keep the contractor on. He said, yes, that's true. I said, okay. So the whole 9 months she was there, why wasn't she building these processes for you guys to be able to do your contracts and negotiate and have a system in place for contracting, as in commercial contracts? He went quiet. I said, so basically, you want someone to come in and clean up the mess. And for me, where I'm at in my career, I don't mind fighting some fires, but I'm not going to go perm to fight every fire. Now, if you want to offer the role as a contract basis, then maybe we can have a conversation. Because what I could do is do the things that this contractor didn't do. He went quiet. I said, but if you want me to come perm, we have to add an extra 25,000 to the salary. Because that's the only reason why it'd be worth my while. He said, can he come back to me? I said, no problem. Do you know the agency called me? She said, Toya, he was so impressed with you. He said, this is the way you negotiate, then in the role you're going to be fantastic. He said that he's willing to meet you halfway and would like a second interview and have another person on the panel. I said, no, I'm still not convinced about this role because he's not bringing all his issues to the table with what's happening here. I said, but what I can tell you from the interview and the conversation I had with him is this is a role that's ever changing because the role hasn't been defined. You need somebody to fight fires, but the fire will never be put out because there's so many of them. The contractor doesn't want to stay because it's too much for her. So rather than continue to throw money down the drain. You want a permanent person there. This is why the role is here. And what I need from a role is, yes, I need to be challenged, but I need a role that I'm also going to be able to have a success story. There needs to be deliverables that I can like put my initial on. There's nothing here because I'm just cleaning up mess. Do you know the woman put the phone down on me, the agent? She was vexed. Do your due diligence. I've got an episode on due diligence. I feel like I can come up here and read all the dilemmas and there'll be a podcast episode for it. But the reason why I come and share these things is to show you that how things are happening. You see, an organisation will show you who they are, will show you parts of them through the people that interview you. Your job is to really understand whether you can deal with the shit that is going to be presented to you. If you ask the right questions at interview, you'll be able to see whose ego is being inflated. Is it the hiring manager? Is it her second in command? If you ask the right questions at interview, you'll be able to know whether this is an organisation of some form of integrity. If you do your job very well at interview, and believe me, interviewing is a job. Yeah, it's only recently now that we're doing our interviews remotely. People are still requesting that people go to office to do interviews. I don't go to people's office to do interviews, by the way. That's a waste of my time. It's a waste of my transport money, only for me to reject the job or for the job not to be offered to me. I'm not spending any money to get a no. Imagine spending £25 on transport for somebody to come and tell you no. Whew, that's painful. I think in the interview that I had for the example I've given for the purposes of this episode, I feel like the goalpost was moved because I thought we were all entering this interview with honesty. They moved the post by trying to cover stuff up and hoping that they were interviewing somebody who was ignorant. No, I'm seasoned. The more interviews you have, the more seasoned you become at how to interview. And people talk about selling yourself. No, I don't feel like you have to sell yourself. I think what you have to do is show how you could add value. And I think as soon as you understand that, your approach to interviews will be slightly different. The original dilemma, I think what I love about this young lady, and I just think she's a brilliant person anyway, but what I love about her is she prioritized herself, not the organisation. Some of you are loyal to an organisation before they've even given you a contract. She wasn't. She was loyal to herself. She was still interviewing. She had a job offer, but these other people didn't know that. But she allowed things to progress how they were or not, in this case, and basically was annoyed at the fact that if she had waited for the 2 months, she would have been screwed. We're at a point, I think, in life where social media has given us permission to have uncomfortable conversations. The fact that I'm even saying honest conversation at interviews uncomfortable is wild. Because I think honest conversation at interviews is just honest. There is a likability factor, 100%. You know, you have to be likable in an interview. And it's not a conventional likable, but somebody has to want to have a conversation with you. Crack a 1-2 joke. You understand? You know, oh, the weather's lovely. Oh, I'm literally baking like a chicken here, and I don't even like poultry. You know, these Oyibo people, they showed me how to tell these small joke. Because when you start doing that, you lower the barrier of defense as well, and they think, oh, okay, she's okay. When you ask uncomfortable when you ask questions that would seemingly be uncomfortable, what you're doing is you're allowing yourself an opportunity to ask yourself whether you can see yourself working in a particular place. Stop limiting your options by interviewing in only one organisation. Let the dilemma I opened this podcast with be an example to you of how wild organisations are now behaving. If you want confirmation of how wild organisations are behaving, you can see it where they're now saying 5 days a week in the office. 5 days. How productive is it that somebody will battle on the transport system to get to work for a few hours and then battle to get home? What happened to work-life balance? What happened to flexibility? I'm going to challenge you. If you have an interview or you're looking to interview and you've sorted out your CV, you're applying for roles, I want you to write down 6 things that you would want in a role. So, for example, it could be that you want a role whereby you are fully remote. It could be that you want a role that has a big push towards learning and development. Whatever it is, write down 6 things that you want in a role. Yeah? Of those 6 things, pick 2 things you're willing to compromise on. Because at the end of the day, you're never going to get everything. When you go to interview and you adopt the techniques that I've taught you and spoken about, in an interview, say to them, I have a few things that would be really nice to have in this role. And I want to know if you're able to provide those things. And I would suggest that you ask this question if you feel that it's the right time to ask. Because if you want to see how flexible an organisation is, tell them what you want, tell them what you need, take a step back and know what you're going to compromise on. A company who is inflexible at interview, inflexible at offer stage, will be inflexible in practice, in life, if you are working there. We're living in an era now where people are having kids, family, some people, it's not even that. Some people just want a balance to enjoy the fruits of their labour, where work isn't life. Ask those questions at interview that will let you know how flexible an organisation is and how an organisation views work-life balance. One of my favourite questions is, how did you adapt during lockdown? And what lessons did you learn during lockdown and COVID that you have brought forth now into your organisation? If you are strategic, if you really digest these episodes, I'm telling you right now, you'll have these organisations in the palm of your hand. It's time now to start elevating ourselves. You can work for some of the biggest organisations ever. You can have the best CV in the world, but if you do not mentally elevate yourself when you walk into these interviews, you'll be picking up crumbs at the end. Let's all be like our good sis, who understood where the red flags were and chose herself. Start choosing yourself. You do not owe any of these organisations a damn thing. At interview, everybody has a mutual requirement. If you're lucky, some organisation hiring managers would lead with their ego and provide you with the red flag that you can see so you can avoid them. Congratulations on this queen for her role in tech, and congratulations for this queen for recognising the red flags in this organisation and not waiting at a bus stop for them to come and onboard her. They couldn't even onboard her on time. 2 months for an onboarding. That is wild. But since we're still on the topic, please be reminded, when you are offered a job, keep interviewing. Some organisations can offer and rescind an offer because the requirement of an organisation has changed, or an organisation is going into administration, or there's a recruitment freeze and they're no longer got the budget to recruit. Yeah, those things happen. I've experienced those things in my career. I want to thank this queen for allowing me to come here and share her dilemma so that we can all learn. I want to thank everybody for all their love and support for the Toy Talks podcast and platform. I also want to say that the date of this episode is Monday the 14th of August. It goes live on the 15th. And this week, at some point this week, the website will be down for a few days so that I can upload the new masterclasses, which are the maternity masterclass and the freelance interim and consulting masterclass. Those 2 masterclasses are amazing. I'm really, 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 really proud of them. They come with templates, accompanying templates. So for example, the maternity masterclass comes with a template to do with notification. So the email or letter that you would write to your organisation to notify them of your pregnancy. I've drafted it for you. Literally. The freelance masterclass, I have a list of umbrella companies if you are working inside IR35. I explain inside and outside IR35. I have a segment on that particular masterclass about how to create a contractor infrastructure around you, which includes the things to look for in an accountant. All these are in templates for each of these masterclasses. I think there's between 5 to 6 templates each for each masterclass. So for me, I'm giving you the blueprint, and I'm really, really excited to do that. So at some point this week, the website will go down to enable me to upload the masterclasses and the templates, and then I'm hoping shortly after they will be live on the Toy Talks website. So by the time I come back on this podcast, they should be up by the grace of the ancestors. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say to you, if you want to follow me on social media, my Instagram page is Toya_Washington. The Toy Talks podcast Instagram page is Toya_Talks. I'm also on TikTok, Toya Washington, and on Snapchat, Toya Washington. And if you have a work-related dilemma, a work-related or a life dilemma, and you think that we'll be able to address it here on the podcast, it will be done anonymously. Your identity will be kept a secret. Please email hello@toytalks.com. Before I sign off, I just also want to say I've been getting quite a lot of emails about collaborations. And I know some of these brands listen to the podcast, or at least listen to certain parts of the podcast. Hopefully you've listened to this episode enough to hear this. I don't work for free. I don't work for free. I don't work for free. Nothing in this life is free. If you want to collaborate or you want to work with me, then you have to pay, because a labourer is worth their wage, and black women are not here to be laboured. Yeah? If you are interested in being a guest on this podcast, if you listen to this podcast, I don't have a lot of guests. I have had guests in the past, and there is an episode coming up with a very special guest, actually. But there has to be synergy between what I teach here, what we discuss here, and the guest. Yeah? I don't just have anyone. And I personally am very protective of the platform, simply because we've worked really hard to get here. And also as well, this podcast is 2 black women, about black women, for black women, and then everyone else. And black women must be centered in a collaboration. They must be centered in a guest. Do you understand? Like, I'm not just going to have a guest so that they can utilize the platform for exposure. It's not going to happen. There has to be a synergy, and I'm very passionate about that. Should I be having more guests? Maybe I should, but I feel like what you guys enjoy is the authenticity of of these podcast episodes. That it would be an organic guest or an organic collaboration. I'm not fake, I'm not phony, and I'm not trying to sell you anything. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to sell you fantasy anyway, I'll tell you that much. But I will consider the guests, of course, and if it makes sense, we'll make it work. With the collaborations, nothing is for free. I can't teach that and not operate in that. And it's actually quite offensive when someone says gifting. My name is not Gifty, Gifta, Giforuro. My name is not Gift. I didn't ask you for gift. A labourer is worth their wage. Thank you. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.